everyone, thanks very much for joining us again. I'm Rob from Enginetuner and welcome to episode 2 of our build series, Project Type R Evolution. In the first episode, I introduced the car. I explained about its history, about the spec, and about the things that we were doing to evolve this build into 2023. The car has now been on the dyno, hence why it's wearing these very unattractive BBS wheels. So ordinarily the Type R runs Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres, and although they're really grippy on the tarmac, they are the opposite of grippy on the metal rollers. So we've put these on. These are some spare wheels that I've got. Actually, the more they're on there, the less I hate them.
Oh, hell no!
Who knows, maybe we change the colour and we'll keep them. So let me explain where we've got to. Previously, this car on pump fuel had 640 brake horsepower at 2.1 bar. The car has now been mapped on the dyno for pump fuel under the new setup. So turbo is in, we made a few other changes, the new exhaust is on, the new clutch is on, and I can say that we are in a very good place so far. Really good, better than I expected.
You want to know what the biggest difference was? More power? You goddamn right, more power! More power!
So on low boost, which is 1.4 bar, we're at 577 horsepower, pretty good. On high boost, which is 2.2 bar, we are at 735 brake horsepower and 600 pound-foot of torque.
Yeah, boy.
On pump fuel, just the stuff you can go and buy in Tesco or Shell, or if you're really stuck, Texaco or Esso. But this is just phenomenal. I didn't think we would be quite where we are with this car. I thought we might get to 700, but we are 95 horsepower up on where we were with the previous setup. It's insane. Just to give you an idea of how the Xona rotor setup compares to, say, the Garrett G series equivalent, we've mapped a few cars now, built and mapped, on the G35 1050 turbo, and we're about 30 horsepower up with equivalent boost and equivalent setup. So it's just absolutely phenomenal. You joined me this morning in a typically January morning on Dartmoor, just outside of Plymouth. The reason we're here is that we've been road testing the car today. When you're building something like the Type R with this much power for the streets, which is what it will always be, predominantly a street car, you need to get out and drive in different conditions. You need to make sure it's drivable, that there are no funny points anywhere in any of the maps. So we decided to take it out and give it a bit of an exercise. So far, so good. My big concern, actually, when I saw the graph for the map that we've now put on it, was that it might be a little bit too laggy compared to the old setup, because the peak torque has definitely shifted to the right a little bit by about 500 revs. But actually, there was no need to be concerned. The thing is still an absolute rocket ship. And I didn't drive it particularly hard to get here, but there's no lag. It just goes. It's just phenomenal. I can't wait to see where we end up. So when we were mapping it for pump fuel, we were doing very well. We went up through the different boost levels, 1.8 bar, 2 bar, 2.1 bar, 2.2 bar. And it was at that point we encountered our first problem. And you always get these problems when you're mapping something of this high power and it's complicated. The Cyvex told us that we had low fuel pressure, which is not a great place to be when you're demanding that much fuel at higher loads and higher revs. And the Cyvex did its job. It basically ensured that we were warned of the issue, and Martin was able to back out of it to investigate further. So what this has meant that we had to stop where we were, and we had to make some changes after we kind of diagnosed what the issue was. So this is what we've done. We have removed the swell pot from underneath the bonnet. And as you will know probably better than I do, a swell pot is basically something that you use to prevent fuel starvation problems, particularly if you're going to use your car in anger or you're going to use it as a track car. The last thing you want on a bend is to have a fuel starvation problem, because you can end up with a very badly damaged engine. And Subarus are kind of known for fuel starvation problems, actually. So A swirl pot was fitted a few years ago when the engine was built. So that has now gone. And the idea being that we want to make sure that the fuel is as cool as possible. So in its place, we have fitted a fuel cooler. I'll show you that in a minute. That sits very low down where the swirl pot was located before, just here. And the cold air from underneath the car flows straight through the fuel cooler to hopefully keep the temperatures much better and under control. We've also fitted something really cool actually, which we've fitted to a few of our customer builds, but it's a twin pump in-tank hanger by Radium, and attached to the hanger are two 450 litre per hour fuel pumps, big boy fuel pumps, which are E85 compliant. So those won't deteriorate if we run race fuel and leave some in the tank. It'll all be fine. So we've actually now got one fewer fuel pump on this car. We've got no swirl pot, but we have gained a fuel cooler. So far so good. We think that this is going to solve our problem. We haven't yet been back onto the dyno because we wanted to do a bit of road testing. We wanted to make sure everything was okay. We've also fitted a 4-bar map sensor from Link. We found that at 2.2 bar, the 3-bar map sensor was starting to struggle a little bit, kind of at its capacity, so we've upgraded that. And let's see where we get to. You know, to have this kind of power on pump fuel is phenomenal, and goodness knows where we're going to end up. Can't wait to see. But let me show you now some of the changes that we've made under here. So let's start with the main event. Here is the Xona Turbo in all of its glory. God knows how the guys actually managed to squeeze this in, but they've done it. So this is the Xona 9569S with the larger X4C compressor cover. I of course got that completely wrong in the last video, but thankfully in the editing suite we managed to cover up my shame. It will have shortly a blanket put over the exhaust housing to keep things nice and cool, but at the moment it's fully on display. We've also fitted the 4-bar map sensor, which just sits there underneath the throttle body. And in this corner here, we have got the new fuel cooler in place of the swirl pot. And actually, because this car isn't like terribly low, and quite a lot of air travels underneath it, that's getting loads of nice, cool, fresh air from underneath the car, which is where you want it, because if we had it mounted higher up, the air that would flow through it would be hot air that's passed through the radiator, past the engine, and we wouldn't get the full cooling effects that we want. So hopefully that will do the trick when we're demanding more performance from the engine. So what's next? So we're going to carry on road testing this car until we're happy with how it drives, maybe a few tweaks here and there. We'll then get it back onto the dyno, where we will finish off the pump fuel map. Then we will map it for a 40% methanol mix. Then we will map it for E112 race fuel. And then we will dial in all the extra stuff that we're going to need if we're going to be using this car in the coming season in anger and drag racing and hill climbs and just me tearing up and down my local neighborhood. So we're going to dial in the launch control. We're going to have to limit the boost in at least first, maybe also in second, because it's just going to snap drive shafts and stuff if we give it all the boost in the first gear. We are also going to potentially run some traction control through the ECU, because at the moment it doesn't have any at all. Something we can switch on and off as needed, particularly useful on a track. And that's it. And I think once we've finished with the engine and we're entirely happy with how it's running, we'll then fit the Haltech digital dash, which we bought for this car. Really excited about that. I love a gadget. And those dashes are super cool. So make sure you join us for episode 3. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you've got questions about any aspect of this car, anything I've talked about today, anything else that we haven't covered, don't hesitate to let us know. Send us a message, leave a comment, give us a ring, doesn't matter. Just get in touch and see you next time.